Staying with that story, will the instigators of last year's violent unrest finally be brought to book? To explain the legal process, let's bring in legal expert Zola Majavu to just speak to us very quickly. Mr. Majavu, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. This seems like a very mammoth task in terms of these cases going to court and all these people, being arrested from different parts of the country, etc. Still investigations going ahead. So it looks like it's going to be quite a long time before we actually see anybody being punished for the alleged instigation last year.
Good morning, Masego, and good morning to the viewers out there. Of course, it's still going to be a long way, but it is unsurprising given the nature of the allegations. And I think we mustn't jump to the punishment part, because the punishment would presuppose that a conviction will necessarily follow, which may or may not be the case. But if one has regard to how the incident unfolded, the NPA, and in fairness to them, would want to make sure that, one, they do not compromise the manner in which the data or the evidence on which they seek to rely upon in court to prove this case is not compromised. Secondly, we can accept that this matter happened across the length and breadth of the country, as you rightly pointed out, that some of the suspects come from different provinces, not necessarily and exclusively from KZN. I would imagine that what part of the evidence that they are busy collating and protecting from an integrity point of view has to do with the triangulation from the various cell phone masks that they may have used to pinpoint these perpetrators. It is an organized, or at the very least, the allegation would be that it was organized on a syndicated basis. So that requires a fair amount of investigation. And in fairness to the NPA, they are probably taking that time because they know that as defense counsel, one of the first things that we will do when we receive the docket, which they are obliged by law to share with the representatives of the accused persons, is to see if proper processes were followed. And most particularly for this case, they would want to see if the evidence on which the NPA relies upon was properly collected. If it was collected through unlawful means, even if it is credible, it may not be admissible in a court of law. So I can understand why the task would be so monumental and why they would want to move with relative caution. So we should not expect this matter to be trial ready anytime soon.
And of course, especially because we still have other instigators, for instance, Mr. Majavu, who were arrested last year, Yongizwe Mchunu, for instance, whose cases are also still pending, and it's more than a year after the July unrest. But when it comes to what South Africans, the sentiments around many South Africans who believe that the former president's son, Dudu Zuma, should have been one of the people who have been arrested by now, saying that they don't understand why the NPA and the Hawks are saying that they still need to investigate her because her instigation was on social media for everyone to see. What do you think about that? Are South Africans being unfair on the Hawks?
They may not be unfair. However, we also do not know whether or not that person is within the radar of the Hawks. And understandably so, the Hawks are not going to give much out by way of information for fear that they may compromise their own case. So we cannot rule that possibility out. But I think the general public must be patient, because if the NPA rushes purely to satisfy that public curiosity as point of view and the matter collapses in court, the reputational damage for the NPA is huge. And it is exactly that which may further lead to the perception that people have lost faith in the entire judicial system, including the prosecution's authority. So I think we would do well as a country to allow the investigative process to take its course. And once that has happened, let the NPA as a prosecutorial unit to then make their independent decisions, because at the end of the day, it is the prosecution that must prove its case beyond reasonable doubt. And our public sentiments are not going to assist in a court of law. It's going to be about solid and credible evidence collected properly. Public sentiments would have literally no place or no role to play in the unfolding judicial value chain, so to speak. So I think it's still early days. And the fact that in the Adam Mchunu case, to which you referred earlier, it still has not been put to a point where it's trial ready, it's an indicator of the difficulties that the state may be facing. And the unfortunate part, with these types of investigation, these are investigations that we say are prosecutorially guided. So the police, through the Hawks, will put whatever data that they have collected in a docket. It goes to the prosecutor, who looks at it and then makes further notes in the prosecution diary, for example, to say, go retake this particular statement or get authorities or permission to enable you to access this other information. So it's a lot of toing and froing, which the public may not be privy to, and which the public cannot expect to be kept abreast of. Because if that happens, the very same perpetrators live amongst us, our brothers, our sisters, our boyfriends, our wives. So we've got to allow the investigative process to unfold, because the risk is, if they are hasty, and sometimes the police and the prosecutors do get over hasty and bowing to public pressure, and when the matters come to court, the matters collapse in court, and the very same people that put them under pressure, which is us in a form of a society, we blame them again. Remember, the rights of the affected persons are also going to be vehemently protected by defense counsel. And I think the NPA is probably trying to dot the I's and cross the T's. How long this may take, we don't know, but we should not rush it, because if we rush it, there may well be light from oncoming trade. So I can understand from both sides. And remember, constitutionally, in terms of Section 35 of the Constitution, those accused persons are presumed innocent, and all their rights constitutionally enshrined must be protected. And there's a balancing act that has to happen here. Whether or not certain people have said certain things on social media, that may not in and of be admissible in a court of law as evidence that may result in a conviction, which may then result in punishment. I think it's a long way to go, but I think that the state seems to be handling this with the necessary caution and sensitivity. If I were my other defense counsel head, I would say I would be watching this very closely, because I know there may be a misstep, or they may make a mistake from a procedural point of view. And that is precisely what prosecution is trying to guard against, but it's still early days.
Yeah, and that goes back to the point of it being quite a mammoth task. Mr. Majavu, thank you so much for your insight here on All Angles and on eNCA. Zola Majavu, a legal expert, speaking to us there about that case. Well, I guess South Africans are going to learn a lot about this because it's the first time really in democratic South Africa that we have such cases appear in court.